I'm working on these cakes, I'm thinking, and the thought that kept coming to my mind was, our lives are so much like a cake. And I would just think of all these analogies of how God's hand is at work in our lives, just like my hand is at work in this cake. And it's for good. Our loving Creator has a good plan for each one of us. And He knows exactly what ingredients needs to go into our lives to make us that beautiful masterpiece that He's created. You know, if you're quilting or if you're, whatever you're doing, you have, yes, I want this color here and I want that color here, and you know how you want it to look in the end. Well, that's exactly what God does with us. We are all fearfully and wonderfully made. We've been knit together in our mother's womb, and I think I can 100% guarantee that not one of you remembers what it felt like to be knit together in your mother's womb. So, I thought what I would do is share with you my story and how God knit me together for a particular purpose. And so, the foundation of my cake is my story I'm going to share. I have a wonderful family, and at the age of 14, actually we all became Christians. And after high school, I had no desire to go to college, so I didn't. But I traveled, and I wanted to do missionary work. So I went to Belgium on a short-term mission, worked in the kitchen at the Belgian Bible Institute. I went to Bible school in Sweden and in England for a year, and that was a really good experience. By the way, I was really, really shy in school, and all these things. God just had this purpose, and okay, I'm not shy anymore. And then I sang on a singing tour all around the United States and in the Orient for 3 months. Just had lots of wonderful opportunities, and just like every ingredient here that I'm adding, all of them are very essential. Can you imagine what a cake would be like if it didn't have flour? Can you imagine what it would be like without sugar, salt? No. And He knows all the perfect ingredients to go in there. Well, my greatest desire in life was to get married. And so when I was 22, I met Prince Charming. Seriously, he was my sweetheart. He swept me off my feet. He was tall, he was handsome. This guy was Mr. Romance. And within 2 months' time, we were engaged, and everything was wonderful. I couldn't have been happier. And my dream was coming true. He even lived on a mansion on the hill. And it was all perfect. Well, then 2 months later, after that, of course we broke up. And devastated. God, I thought you brought me to this point. You allowed all these things in my life for this purpose, and you're ruining it. Take it off. Have any of you ever felt like that? Yeah. God prepared you for what you thought you wanted, and He ruined it. Well, what I learned later on in life was that no, God doesn't ruin it. He has a plan. He knew all those ingredients had to get messed up, in my opinion, because He has another plan in order to make this cake be the masterpiece that He wants it to be. This is the lovingly prepared place for the cake batter. Now, if this cake batter could think or talk, it's probably going to say, "Nuh-uh, not going there. I'd rather go here." But is it going to accomplish anything there? No. It'll be absolutely good for nothing but to be put in the dishwasher. Nobody's going to want to eat that kind of cake, are they? So, no, it has to go into the properly prepared boundary. Now, this boundary represents things in our lives that are very difficult situations. It's a place that you really can't get out of. It could be a financial situation. It could be a relational, maybe a tough marriage, maybe just a friendship, maybe a health situation, something, it just, for a time, you just can't get out of it. And in my case, it was an emotional boundary. I was very hurt. And as far as I knew, I was in the fire. And God knows just the perfect amount of time to make that cake just perfectly baked and ready for the next step. By the way, I bake all my cakes in individual layers. And I like to make lots of layers, and I'll tell you that in just a minute. And as you can see, they're different colors, because I like to make my cakes beautiful on the inside, as well as the outside. And so the cake comes out, I put it on a cooling rack, I pretty much wrap it fairly quickly, and put it right into the freezer. Okay, again, if you were the cake, again, I just got out of the fire. But the freezer kind of represents waiting times. And in my life, I wanted to get married, and it wasn't happening, so I'm waiting. But in the meantime, a couple years later, a door opened for me to go to a Christian ministry in Texas. It was kind of a tough decision because I had to use the money that I was saving for a car. By the way, just so you know, I was 25 at this time. I'm still living at home with Mom and Dad. All my friends are getting married. I'm doing their wedding cakes. So, okay, God, I need to make something right here. So I decided to put everything aside, quit my job, use the money I was trying to get for a car, and I went off to this ministry to hopefully get my heart right with the Lord. So, there are times in our lives where God fills us up. And that's what I'm going to do with this cake. And like I said, he is just as interested at making you beautiful on the inside as he is on the outside. So my first filling is white chocolate mousse. Yeah. Love that mousse. So this program that I was going through was a 10-week program. And there were about 40 of us there, and we took classes, and we had work duty and things like that. It was an intensive time there, but I learned a lot. I learned a lot about God's sovereignty in my life. That is where I learned that, it wasn't God purposing to hurt me. It was God doing, we live in this life and things happen, but God uses those things for good. And it was really encouraging. And let's use this again. This is ganache. It is melted chocolate chips and whipped cream. Ooh. How many chocolate lovers do we have in here? Yeah. Oh, you are after my heart. Well, then we'll just put all this in there. Yeah. It's never enough. I love chocolate. I know. Yes. Yummy, smooth chocolate. Okay. And God in his goodness, he gives us good things. We got to remember those good things. Sometimes they can be kind of hidden, like in these fillings. But it's all good. And I couldn't be doing this with these cakes if they weren't baked properly, if they hadn't been frozen. Did you see how I'm handling this? How many of you tried to do things with a fresh cake right out of the oven? Sure, it tastes good, yum, 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 but it doesn't look very pretty, does it? And this is seedless raspberry jam. And I just love all these flavors together. Chocolate and raspberry and white chocolate mousse or Bavarian cream. It's just amazing. So during this 10 weeks, God was doing an amazing thing in my life, just refreshing me. How many of you you can think of times that are filling up for you? Maybe time spent with a friend, even every Sunday going to church. Just times of encouragement. Well, that's exactly what God was doing at this time. Well, then it came to the end of these 10 weeks, and wasn't quite sure where I wanted to go after that. God did a work, but now what? Sure didn't have a man in my life. So, I will say one of the things I was really looking forward to was leaving there because they had a lot of strict rules. They said, they'd been praying about it, and they thought that the very best thing for me to do was to stay and go through it again. And you know why? Because I resisted authority. And I wanted to say, I do not. So I tried to humbly accept their direction because, of course, I don't resist authority, and decided that, okay, God, if you really want me to stay again, you're going to have to change my heart because I do not want to stay. I do not want to go through this 10 more weeks. And besides, I'm the only one that was being asked to stay. I guess I'm a real case. Well, no, God did change my heart overnight. It was wonderful. God does that when he wants us to do something. He gives us the grace to do it. He never asks us to do something that he's not going to enable us to be able to do. And what I learned in those next 10 weeks was that what God had done was he had shown me all these wonderful things. And he just needed to put on what's like, this is called a crumb coat. And it was like he just needed to glue down those crumbs. Another necessary part of cake decorating is this crumb coat, because it's just a thin layer of frosting. And it helps to keep the crumbs from getting into your final coat. So it was just one more very necessary thing for me to go through to be usable and to become that masterpiece that God was designing for me to become. And it was all good. I actually really enjoyed going through it the second time. I made some new friends and got a few more privileges because I was a little more familiar there. And after I've completed those 20 weeks of boot camp, I felt like I had arrived. I was finished. Don't I look lovely? Well, not exactly. Because now this cake has to go into the refrigerator for the frosting to set up. So now, off to the refrigerator I go. But that time is necessary because, see, the frosting is dry, I can touch it, and the crumbs are stuck. It's permanent. God did a good work. So, I came home from that ministry, and one of the things God had taught me was learning to be under authority. So I decided what better place for me to learn to be a submissive wife, if that's what I wanted to become, than to go home and live with mom and dad. So, wanting to be a nice, submissive, sweet young lady. And by the way, I'm being kind of sarcastic, but it really is true what God did. I still have to learn that lesson. But anyway, I asked my dad what he thought I should do now. I had no clue. So the first thing he tells me is you need to die to all those dreams you have of getting married. I'm like, you've got to be kidding. I'm 26 now. All I want to do is get married. No, want me to die. So, okay, I'm going to obey. Now, some people will say, okay, obedience, submission, all that, those are bad words. You know? You mean you're going to be a doormat? Not at all. The thing that God showed me was that he honors those who have a submissive and humble heart. He gives grace to the humble, but resists the proud. And when we're wanting our own way all the time, that's the big I right in the middle of pride, right in the middle of P-R-I-D-E, you know. So I decided I would do what my dad said, and I got rid of everything that had to do with weddings. Okay. Next. Well, Mom, she had been convicted that ladies ought to wear dresses. And so she would like me to wear dresses. So, okay, I will wear dresses. Some of these things I wasn't like, why? Bible doesn't tell me I have to do that, but I'm going to obey. Okay, and they really didn't care for the kind of music I listened to. I listened to Christian rock. You know, Sandy Patty, Amy Grant, Steve Green, Keith Green, you know, rock. Well, I didn't think that was bad music, but that's what they wanted me to do, was stop listening to that kind of music. So I did, and actually kind of was a good thing, because I learned a whole new appreciation for instrumental, classical, and the hymns. I had no idea how wonderful, amazing theology is in hymns. I started having my quiet time in the hymnal, not always, but amazing what, God, you take one thing out, God fills it up with other things. Amazing. And then they wanted me to stop dating. Well, it wasn't too hard because I didn't want to go through that heartbreak again. But I committed at the end of courtship, and commit to courtship, which meant the next guy that came into my life, I was going to make sure my parents were completely on board with, meaning they were going to approve. And so I made those commitments, and it was all good. God had a work to do in my life in that season of life. And anyway, so in May of 1994, I got a letter in the mail. By the way, I was wondering, how can I meet somebody if I'm not dating? I wasn't, But anyway, I got a letter in the mail from a guy named David Henrikson. David who? David Henrikson. What? Oh, yeah. He was that tall guy that I met at the ministry I was at. And what's he writing me for? Well, he just said that God had put me on his heart. He was praying for me, and did his prayers have any merit? So I started writing him back with the permission of my parents. I was 27. Just so you know, nowhere in the Bible does it say that when you turn 18 years old, you no longer have to obey mom and dad. It simply says, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right, and your life will be long. Yeah. And then it goes on to say that you will lead and cleave. It doesn't say you are now your own independent self and you can make your own decisions and you don't dare listen to mom and dad anymore because you're a big girl. No. So, we need to respect our parents because God gave them to us for a purpose. And so they direct, they provide, they guide, they protect. I mean, there's all kinds of things. And not just parents, but bosses and pastors. They're all there for a purpose. Anyway, so David and I started writing. I shared all my letters with my parents. And we actually all developed a nice friendship. And then David started writing my dad personally. And decided to have David come out and kind of check the family out. And he did. And anyway, long story short, we got engaged. That was in May of 95. And in July, just 2 months later, 95, we shared our first kiss with each other at the altar. I had finally arrived. Yes! I achieved the desire of my heart, and I lived happily ever after. Not really, because you know what happens is there's another cake that has to go on top, so it starts all over again. So, 6 months after I got married, I got pregnant with baby number 1. My daughter Elizabeth. And then 2 years later, I had another one, Daniel. 14 months later, I had my third, Jonathan. Another 2 years later, I was done by then. I was not a happy pregnant person. But God knew that there was more to come, and that was okay. I was trusting him. I got pregnant with number 4 and 5. Yeah, twins, Catherine and Benjamin. They weighed 9'1" and 9'13". And so you can imagine I felt really done. But God said no. I have one more. And 3 months later I got pregnant again, and it was a girl, and it was Sarah Faith. And she has been a blessing. So she's now 12, my oldest is 20. And you're probably wondering what those things are I was sticking in the cake. Those are the foundation that's necessary. It might look like it might hurt. It's necessary for all the next seasons that have to sit on top of it. So God knew I needed a nice solid foundation. Because the next season that was coming was homeschooling. I needed a lot of support for that. And they say hindsight's 20/20, and I can see how God even used all the things that he put in that first cake, how he prepared me for this next season. And the season only lasted for 10 years, but it was a very, very valuable time in my life. And I learned so much. I don't know if the kids were homeschooled. I was homeschooled. Again, another season. It can have so many, there can be so many tears. I mean, that's how our lives are. I'm just going to consider this my current season, and this is called menopause. I could put it on like this and it would stay. That's how it was, but you know, menopause. It doesn't stay. So we'll just stick it on there. So I don't think I have to explain that one very much. You know, and so on it goes. God is faithfully at work in our lives, and it's all good, and it's all for a beautiful purpose, because he wants to make you a masterpiece. He's wanting to create this whole body to be the beautiful bride of Christ, and that's his heart for you. I mean, there is no evil. There is no evil intent in God's heart at all. And when these bad things happen, and of course this doesn't explain all the bad that happens in this world, but it gives you kind of hopefully a new perspective of, yes, that loving Creator is at work in my life, and he has a special plan. And right now I'm going to play a song as I do the most beautiful work. And this beautiful work is times in our life that God brings in those blessings, you know, whether it's through a child saying, "Mommy, I love you," or it's a friend that has just a smile for you, or, you know, it's all those little blessings. Imagine all the petals, all the intricate work that's been put into each one of these flowers is all God's little handiwork to make you just the beautiful princess that he wants you to become. So I'm going to play this song, and you can listen to the words, and just think about God's lovingly designing each aspect of your life. Here we go. Can you hear it? Okay, great.
My child, are you discouraged by the sorrows of the day? Does it seem that life is crumbling? The skies have turned to gray. Don't forget, I gave you promises to guide you every hour. In the moment
God wants us to completely put our lives on his pedestal and trust in him with all of our heart, and not to lean on our own understanding, because like I said, if we were leaning on our own understanding, we would never have made it this far. We would not want to go through the fire. We would not want to go through the freezer. We would not want to have all that perfect ingredients beat together. We wouldn't want any of that. But God says, trust me, my child. It is good. And I have a perfect plan for you. Because I love you. And I delight in you. And you are my workmanship. I have created you for good works in Christ. And he wants us to be able to run the race with endurance. He wants you to know how much he loves you and how much of a beautiful plan he has for you. And so much so that he sent his son Jesus to come as an example, the greatest example, to lay down his life for his bride. And he wants us to do the same. And we're the masterpiece, not just to be admired and to say, oh, wonderful work, but to be cut and served, just like Christ did, for the blessing of others and the glory of his Heavenly Father, the maker of this masterpiece. And that is it.
I will be your strong tower.